The emergency lights painted the Grand Council chamber in an angry red glow. 30 of the galaxy's most powerful beings sat around the massive circular table, their faces showing various signs of worry, anger, and fear. Some had scales, others had tentacles, and a few were even made of pure energy. But they all shared the same concerned look. At the center of the table, a hologram displayed what looked like a massive cloud of darkness moving through space. But this was no ordinary cosmic phenomenon. This was a swarm of void beasts, creatures that had haunted the nightmares of spacefaring races for centuries. The swarm is 3 times larger than any we've ever encountered, announced First Speaker Max, his crystalline body reflecting the red emergency lights. Our best estimates suggest it will reach the Outer Rim colonies in less than 30 days. The chamber erupted in worried whispers. Void beasts were known for their ability to tear through starship hulls like paper and drain entire planets of resources. A swarm this size could devour whole solar systems. "Let them come," shouted War Chief Rod of the Battleborn, pounding his armored fist on the table. "My warriors will meet them in glorious combat." His species was known throughout the galaxy for their fighting prowess, having never lost a war in their 5,000-year history. First Speaker Max's crystal structure dimmed slightly, his species equivalent of a tired sigh. "With all due respect, War Chief, the last time your warriors faced a void beast swarm, you lost 3 battleships in the first hour. This swarm is much bigger. Then we shall die with honor," Rod declared, earning approving nods from the other warrior race representatives. "I suggest we attempt communication again," said Peacemaker Anne of the Diplomatic Confederation, her floating cloud-like form pulsed with gentle colors as she spoke. "Perhaps this time." "We've tried that 18 times," interrupted Logic Master Ben, his mechanical body whirring as he turned to face her. Each attempt resulted in the complete loss of the contact team. The void beasts show no interest in communication. They only consume. The debate continued for hours. The warrior races insisted on direct combat, despite simulations showing catastrophic losses. The diplomatic races kept suggesting peaceful solutions that had failed countless times before. The technological races ran probability after probability, each showing worse results than the last. In the midst of all this, Tom Walker, Earth's junior representative, sat quietly, studying the hologram. He was the newest and youngest member of the Council, representing what many considered the least impressive species in the galaxy. Humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 2 centuries ago, while most other races had been crossing the stars for millennia. Tom raised his hand, following proper Council protocol. Most of the other representatives ignored him, but First Speaker Max noticed. "The Council recognizes Representative Walker of Earth," Max announced, bringing a sudden quiet to the chamber. Tom stood up, straightening his protective environment suit, something that had earned humans much ridicule in the Council. While other species proudly displayed their natural forms, humans insisted on wearing protective gear just in case the station's life support failed. "The void beasts always follow the same pattern when they hunt," Tom began, his voice steady despite the dismissive looks from many Council members. "They send smaller groups ahead of the main swarm to test defenses. But has anyone noticed that they never attack the same way twice if their first attempt fails?" "What's your point, human?" War Chief Rod growled. "Are you suggesting we run away? That's what your kind always does, hide behind walls and armor instead of facing threats head-on." Tom didn't take the bait. Instead, he manipulated the hologram controls, zooming in on the swarm's movement patterns. "They're learning. Each attack teaches them about their prey's defenses. They're not just animals. They're adapting. And if we respond like we always have, we'll fail like we always have." First Speaker Max finished, his crystal body brightening with realization. "Exactly," Tom said. "Maybe it's time to try something different, something the void beasts haven't seen before." He paused, looking around the chamber. "Maybe it's time to try the human way." The chamber fell silent. The human way. Careful, cautious, always planning for the worst, was often mocked in the council. But as the hologram continued to show the massive swarms approach, the silence grew heavy with possibility. First, Speaker Max's voice cut through the quiet. "Representative Walker, please explain what you mean by the human way." The council's attention focused on Tom, and for the first time in its long history, they were ready to listen to what a human had to say. Tom Walker took a deep breath before activating the main display. The hologram shifted, showing a detailed map of human space and its defensive systems. Many council members leaned forward, seeing this for the first time. Humans were usually very private about their military capabilities. "This is how we protect our worlds," Tom explained, pointing to layers of satellites, automated defense platforms, and early warning systems. "We call it the web of caution." War Chief Rod snorted, "Hiding behind machines. Where is the glory in that?" "There is no glory in death, Chief Rod," came a new voice. Captain Jane Miller walked into the chamber, her environment suit matching Tom's. As Earth's fleet commander, she hadn't been scheduled to speak, but the crisis had changed protocols. "Another human in a safety suit," someone muttered, drawing a few laughs. Jane ignored them, walking to the center of the chamber. She pulled up footage from Earth's historical archives. 200 years ago, before we reached the stars, humans fought each other. "We didn't fight like your people do, Chief Rod. We learned, through millions of deaths, that glory means nothing to the dead." The footage showed ancient battles, human warfare evolving from direct confrontations to more complex strategies. The council watched in silence as the images played out. "You see weakness," Jane continued, "but we see survival. Every human soldier carries 3 backup weapons. Every ship has 5 layers of shields. Every plan has 12 backup plans. Do you know why?" She paused, looking around the chamber. Even the energy beings were paying attention now. "Because we're afraid," she said simply. "We're always afraid. And that fear keeps us alive." Logic Master Ben's mechanical eyes wared as he processed this. "Fascinating. You embrace your fear rather than trying to overcome it." "Fear is a gift," Tom added, standing beside Jane. "It's our body's way of saying, think carefully about this. Other species evolved to be stronger, faster, or more technologically advanced. We evolved to be careful." He brought up new images, human ships engaging various space threats. The council members watched as human vessels seemed to retreat, only to lead enemies into carefully prepared traps. They saw human colonies with layer upon layer of defenses, each designed to slow down attackers until help could arrive. "Your people call us cowards," Jane said, "because we won't face the void beasts head-on. But look at these battle records. Every time humans have faced a superior force, we've survived not through strength, but through preparation." Peacemaker Anne's cloudy form swirled with interest. "But surely such constant fear is exhausting. How do you live with it?" Tom smiled. "By planning for everything that could go wrong. These suits we wear, they've saved lives 3 times in the last decade when station systems failed. The backup systems you mock, they've prevented 17 major disasters in human space." He brought the Void Beast swarm image back up. "We've been studying them since we first encountered them. Every movement, every attack pattern, every response to different weapons. Not to fight them, to understand them." "Understanding born of fear," First Speaker Max mused, his crystal form glowing brightly. "But how does this help us with the current crisis?" Jane stepped forward, her hands moving over the hologram controls. The display changed to show a complex battle plan. "Because we've spent years preparing for exactly this scenario. We have ships stationed at strategic points. We have supply catches hidden across 3 sectors. We have evacuation routes mapped out for every threatened system." The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. The humans had been preparing for this while other races had merely hoped it wouldn't happen. "You planned for this specific threat?" Logic Master Ben asked, his mechanical voice showing rare emotion. "Without being asked. without being ordered. Of course we did, Tom replied. We're cowards, remember. We plan for everything. The chamber fell silent again, but this time, the silence was different. It wasn't filled with dismissal or mockery, but with something new, hope. First, Speaker Max's crystal form pulsed with decision. Captain Miller, Representative Walker, tell us more about this plan of yours. The emergency alarms blared through the council station. Red lights flashed as new data poured in from the outer rim. The Void Beast swarm had arrived at its first target, the mining colony of New Hope. Show us. First, Speaker Max commanded, his crystalline form dimming with concern. The main hologram flickered to life, displaying the horror unfolding at New Hope. The colony's main defensive fleet, made up of warrior race ships, had engaged the swarm directly. The results were devastating. 30 ships lost in the first wave. Tom reported, his voice steady despite the grim news. The colony's outer defenses are already breached. War Chief Rod slammed his fist on the table. Impossible. Those were our finest warships. Your finest warships attacking head-on, exactly as the Void Beasts expected, Captain Jane Miller said, manipulating the hologram controls. Watch their pattern. They've seen these tactics before. They know exactly how warrior races fight. The council chamber watched in horrified silence as the Void Beasts tore through ship after ship. The creatures moved with terrifying intelligence, anticipating every direct assault, every honorable charge. New Hope's population. Peacemaker Anne asked, her cloudy form trembling. Safe, Tom answered, bringing up a new display. We activated our evacuation protocols the moment the swarm was detected. Human ships had already begun moving civilians out through our prepared escape corridors. Without authorization. Logic Master Ben's mechanical eyes whirred in surprise. We didn't wait for authorization, Jane explained. Standard human protocol. Act first. Apologize later if needed. Better to ask forgiveness than permission when lives are at stake. The display shifted again, showing hundreds of civilian transport ships safely jumping to hyperspace through carefully plotted routes. Routes that had been mapped out years ago, just in case. The colony itself is lost, Tom continued, but the people are safe. And we've gathered valuable data about how the swarm operates in actual combat conditions. Data. War Chief Rod spat the word. My warriors are dying, and you speak of data. Yes, Jane replied firmly. Data that will help us save more lives. Look here. She zoomed in on a particular section of the battle. The Void Beasts are adapting to energy weapons, but they're showing an unexpected reaction to certain radiation frequencies from our scanning equipment. First, Speaker Max's crystal structure brightened suddenly. You weren't just evacuating civilians. You were running tests. Multiple tests, Tom confirmed. Every human ship in the evacuation fleet was gathering data, testing different frequencies, observing reactions. That's why we insisted on handling the civilian evacuation ourselves. The chamber erupted in a mix of outrage and amazement. The warrior races were appalled at such indirect tactics, while the technological races were impressed by the efficiency. And what has your cautious approach discovered? Logic Master Ben asked. Jane brought up a complex diagram. The Void Beasts communicate through quantum-level signals. Certain radiation patterns disrupt their coordination. They're not just a swarm, they're a network. Break the network, and the swarm becomes vulnerable. Tom finished. But we need more data to find the exact frequency combination that will work on the entire swarm. First, Speaker Max rose from his seat, his crystal form glowing with determination. What do you need from the Council? Authorization to implement the full human defense protocol, Jane answered. We need control of all remaining fleet movements. No more direct assaults. No more honorable last stands. We do this our way, the careful way. The chamber fell silent. Giving humans control of the combined fleets was unprecedented. They were the youngest, the weakest, the most fearful species in the Council. War Chief Rod stood up, his massive form casting a shadow. "You want us to hide, to run, to dishonor ourselves with cowardice?" "No," Tom replied calmly. "We want you to survive. The question is, are you brave enough to be cowards like us?" The fate of the galaxy hung on the Council's answer. The combined fleet hung in space like a metal constellation. Ships of every species had gathered under human command, an arrangement that still made many captains uncomfortable. Captain Jane Miller stood on the bridge of the flagship Cautious Victory, reviewing the final preparations. "All ships report ready," Tom Walker announced from his station. After the Council's approval, he'd insisted on joining the fleet despite his diplomatic status, though some are less enthusiastic than others. Jane nodded, watching the tactical display. The Void Beast swarm was approaching their position, exactly as predicted. "Send the final briefing to all ships. Remind them, no heroics, no glory charges, no last stands. We stick to the plan." The plan was very human, which meant most other species hated it. Instead of meeting the swarm head-on, the fleet had scattered automated drones across a vast area of space. Each drone carried a different type of bait and sensor package, testing the Void Beast's reactions. Behind this field of probes, the fleet itself was split into 12 smaller groups, each hidden in the shadow of a different stellar body. "War Chief Rod's ships are asking permission to move to the front line," Tom reported, a hint of worry in his voice. "Denied," Jane replied firmly. "Remind them that breaking formation will result in immediate removal from the combat zone." She'd made this threat clear during the briefing. Any ship that didn't follow the human battle plan would be forcibly towed away by the specially prepared timeout ships. The warrior races had been furious about this rule, but the Council had given humans complete tactical control. As Jane had explained, "We're not risking the entire galaxy because someone wants to die gloriously." The tactical display blinked as the first Void Beasts reached the drone field. The monsters were massive, each one larger than a battleship, their dark forms seeming to bend light around them. But instead of charging through, they hesitated. "They're confused," Tom observed. "The drones are giving off too many different signals. They can't coordinate their response." Jane allowed herself a small smile. "Just as planned. Begin Phase 2. Across the battlefield, carefully hidden ships activated special radiation emitters. Each one broadcasts a slightly different frequency based on the data gathered during the New Hope evacuation. The Void Beast's movements became even more erratic. Multiple warrior race ships reporting they're ready to attack the confused enemies," Tom said. "Tell them to hold position," Jane ordered. "The swarm isn't confused enough yet." Hours passed. The Void Beasts drifted through the drone field, their usually coordinated movements becoming increasingly chaotic. Some of the smaller ones began attacking each other, their network communication disrupted by the carefully tuned radiation. "The warrior races are getting restless," Tom reported. "They're saying this isn't real combat, just tricks and cowardice." "Better to be called a coward than to be called dead," Jane replied, using an old human military saying. "Look, Phase 3 is ready to begin." The tactical display showed the swarm had finally split into smaller groups, just as the humans had predicted. Their network disrupted, their coordination broken. The Void Beasts were no longer a single massive threat. "All ships, execute Phase 3, Jane commanded. "Remember, hit and fade. No extended engagements. Strike your designated targets and return to your hiding positions immediately." The fleet moved with precision that would have been impossible just days ago. Ships emerged from hiding, struck at isolated groups of Void Beasts with concentrated fire, then disappeared again before the creatures could respond. It wasn't glorious or honorable. It was careful, calculated, and effective. "First group of Void Beasts eliminated," Tom announced. "No casualties on our side." "Second group reduced by 60%. Another officer added. "Still no casualties." The warrior race ships, finally seeing the effectiveness of the human strategy, began following the plan with increasing enthusiasm. Even War Chief Rod's flagship executed perfect hit and fade attacks. "Send word to the Council," Jane ordered. "Tell them the human way is working. The swarm can be beaten, not through courage or honor, but through caution and planning." The battle continued, methodical and careful, proving with every passing moment that sometimes the most effective warriors are the ones who fear death enough to outsmart it. Captain Jane Miller stared at the data scrolling across her screen, her eyes widening behind her protective visor. 3 days of careful battle had produced more information about void beasts than centuries of direct combat. "Tom, look at this pattern," she called out, sending the data to his station. "Every time we hit them with the R7 frequency, there's a millisecond delay in their response time." Tom Walker studied the numbers, his diplomatic training helping him see patterns others might miss. "And look here, when we combine it with the B3 frequency, the delay increases to 3 milliseconds. The bridge of the cautious victory had become a scientific command center. Screens displayed battle data, sensor readings, and radiation patterns. It wasn't glamorous like the warrior race's command centers, with their trophy walls and victory markers. This was a place of careful study and patient observation. "All ships report minimal damage," the communications officer announced. "The hit and fade tactics are working better than expected. The void beasts can't adapt to what they can't catch." Jane nodded, but her attention was fixed on a new set of readings. "Look at their movement patterns when we hit them with both frequencies at once. They're not just getting confused. They're actually trying to get away from the radiation. First time we've ever seen void beasts retreat," Tom noted. "They usually fight until they're destroyed or victorious." A signal from War Chief Rod's ship interrupted their analysis. His face appeared on the main screen, his expression unusually thoughtful. "Captain Miller, my science officers have noticed something strange. The void beasts near our position are exhibiting signs of fear." "Fear?" Jane leaned forward. "Show me your sensor data." The information from Rod's ship appeared alongside their own readings. The warrior races, finally embracing the human approach, had begun taking detailed scans instead of just charging into battle. "There," Tom pointed to a particular data stream. "When both frequencies hit them at the right intensity, their quantum communication shows patterns similar to panic signals." Jane's mind raced with possibilities. They're not just a network, they're a community. They feel fear, just like us. And if they can feel fear, they can be made to retreat, Tom finished. "But we'd need to broadcast both frequencies at massive power levels across the entire battlefield." "Impossible," Rod growled. "Our ships don't have enough power to generate that kind of radiation field." Jane smiled behind her visor. "No single ship does. But remember what I said during the briefing. Humans always have backup plans. Tom, show them Supply Cache Protocol 7. Tom's fingers flew over his console. A new set of coordinates appeared on the tactical display, revealing dozens of hidden locations throughout the battle zone. "What are these?" Rod demanded. "Emergency radiation buoys," Jane explained. "We planted them weeks ago, when we first detected the swarm's approach. Each one carries enough power to broadcast our frequencies at 10 times the strength of a capital ship." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't just been preparing for battle. They'd been preparing to win. "You knew." Rod's voice was a mix of anger and admiration. "You knew the frequencies would work." "We didn't know," Tom corrected. "We were afraid they wouldn't work. So we prepared for that possibility by having the buoys ready, just like we have 3 other backup plans if this one fails." Jane opened a channel to all ships. "This is Captain Miller. All vessels move to your designated safe zones. Radiation buoys will activate in sequence on my mark. Be warned, the power levels we're about to generate would be lethal to any organic life outside of proper shielding." She paused, looking at the massive swarm on her display. "This is why humans wear protective suits, Chief Rod. Sometimes the safest place to be is inside a shell." The void beasts were about to learn what happened when the galaxy's most cautious species decided to stop playing it safe. All ships confirm safe position, the communications officer reported. Radiation shielding at maximum. Captain Jane Miller took a deep breath, her hand hovering over the buoy activation control. The entire fleet had withdrawn to predetermined safe zones, leaving the void beast swarm surrounded by dozens of hidden radiation buoys. "Last chance to back out," she said, mostly to herself. Tom Walker, still at his station, smiled. "Being cautious about being brave, Captain." "Always," she replied. "Start the activation sequence." The tactical display lit up as the first ring of buoys powered on. The radiation frequencies they discovered, R7 and B3 combined, burst outward in a massive wave. The void beasts nearest to the activated buoys immediately showed signs of distress. "First wave successful," Tom reported. "Void beast communication patterns showing extreme disruption. They're trying to retreat, but the second ring of buoys is behind them," Jane finished. "Activate ring 2. Another wave of radiation burst forth, catching the retreating void beasts between the two fields. The massive creatures began to move erratically, their usual coordinated patterns completely broken. From his ship, War Chief Rod watched in amazement. "They're running away from each other. I've never seen void beasts flee before." "Fear does strange things to any creature," Jane responded. "Even the strongest animal has survival instincts." Activate ring 3. The third wave of radiation created a dome of coverage, trapping the swarm in an ever-tightening field of their worst fear. The void beasts' attempts to escape became increasingly desperate. "Captain," Tom called out, "I'm detecting something strange in their quantum signals. It's like they're screaming." Jane's face hardened behind her visor. "They're not the only ones who've screamed. Remember New Hope Colony. Remember all the worlds they've destroyed. Activate final ring." The last set of buoys powered up, creating a complete sphere of radiation. The void beasts were now trapped in a cage of pure terror, their own fear being used as a weapon against them. Multiple void beasts attempting to breach the radiation field, an officer reported. They're killing themselves trying to escape. "Just like humans would," Tom observed quietly. "When we're terrified enough, we'll do anything to get away." The scene was both magnificent and terrible. The mighty void beasts, terror of the galaxy, were now experiencing the very fear they'd inspired in others. Some fled deeper into the radiation field center, while others dashed themselves against it trying to escape. "War Chief," Jane called out, "your ships are in position." "Yes," Rod replied, his voice carrying new respect. "Though I never thought I'd say this, we await your cowardly tactics with honor." "Begin cleanup operation," Jane ordered. "Remember, no glory charges. Pick off the isolated ones first, just like we practiced. Careful and methodical." The fleet moved in with precision, targeting void beasts that had separated from the main group. The radiation field had broken their network so completely that they couldn't coordinate their defense. One by one, the creatures that had terrorized the galaxy fell to carefully planned, perfectly executed attacks. "First quadrant clear," reported Rod's ship. "Second quadrant reporting no remaining hostiles," came another call. "Third quadrant secured," reported a third. Tom looked up from his station, his eyes wide. "Captain, the remaining void beasts, they're surrendering." The bridge fell silent. On the tactical display, the surviving creatures had moved into a passive formation, their quantum signals broadcasting something entirely new: submission. "Well," Jane said, allowing herself a small smile, "I guess we scared them straight." Victory had come not through courage, but through caution. Not through strength, but through preparation. Not through glory, but through the careful application of fear itself. The galaxy's greatest predators had been defeated by its most fearful prey. The Grand Council chamber looked very different from when this crisis began. Gone were the angry red emergency lights, replaced by the normal soft illumination. But the biggest change wasn't in the lighting. It was in how the council members looked at the human representatives. Tom Walker stood at the center of the chamber, no longer relegated to the outer seats. Captain Jane Miller stood beside him, both still wearing their protective suits. Old habits didn't die easily, especially when those habits had just saved the galaxy. "The final reports are in," Tom announced to the assembled council. "The Void Beast threat has been completely neutralized. The surrendered creatures have been relocated to an uninhabited system, where they remain contained by a permanent radiation field barrier." "And the human fleet's casualties?" First Speaker Max asked, his crystal form glowing with interest. "0 deaths," Jane replied. 17 injuries, all minor. 3 ships damage, all repairable. The chamber erupted in amazed whispers. War Chief Rod stood up, his massive form commanding attention. "In all my years of battle, I have never seen such a victory. No glorious deaths, no heroic sacrifices, just—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Effectiveness. The coward's way," Tom said with a small smile. "As we humans like to call it." "Perhaps," Rod responded, "we need to redefine what we mean by cowardice and courage." Peacemaker Ann's cloudy form swirled thoughtfully. "You turned their own fear against them, used their nature to defeat them without unnecessary destruction." "It was elegant." "It was human," Jane corrected. "We've spent our entire history being afraid. We've learned to make fear work for us instead of against us." Logic Master Ben's mechanical eyes wared as he processed this. "Your species' constant preparation, your redundant systems, your protective gear, these aren't signs of weakness at all, are they? They're adaptations. Evolution." "The Void Beasts taught us something too," Tom added. "Even the most terrifying creature in the galaxy feels fear. The difference is in how you handle it." First Speaker Max rose, his crystalline form casting rainbow patterns across the chamber. "The Council has come to a decision. In light of recent events, we are creating a new division, the Department of Strategic Caution, and we want Earth to lead it." Tom and Jane exchanged surprised looks. "You want the galaxy's most fearful species to teach others about defense?" Jane asked. "We want the galaxy's most successful species to teach others about survival," Max corrected. "Your people saw this threat coming years ago and prepared for it. While we debated honor and glory, you built hidden supply caches and mapped escape routes. While we boasted of our courage, you studied and planned. And most importantly," Rod added, standing to face his fellow council members, "while we mocked their caution, they saved all our lives." Tom stepped forward. "If the council accepts this proposal, what would this new department do?" "Everything you're afraid of," Max replied with what passed for a crystal being's smile. "Study potential threats, prepare defensive measures, create backup plans, and backups for those backups. In short, be human." Jane nodded slowly. "And I assume we'll be allowed to maintain our excessive safety protocols, our protective suits, our redundant systems." "Captain," Rod laughed, "I'm having my entire fleet retrofitted with human-style backup systems as we speak. My warriors complained until I asked them a simple question. Would they rather be alive to complain or dead with their honor?" The chamber filled with appreciative chuckles. The mood was lighter than it had been in weeks, but underneath the relief was a new respect. Respect for a species that had turned its greatest weakness into its greatest strength. "Very well," Tom said, straightening his protective suit out of habit. "We accept the position. And our first recommendation as the Department of Strategic Caution is simple. Everyone should start wearing safety suits. You never know when they might come in handy." The laughter that filled the chamber was warm and genuine. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. True courage isn't about not feeling fear. It's about being smart enough to listen to it.